Okay, as Kriss just mentioned, Raoul began his career as a playwright. You probably all know him as a filmmaker, but if you can just talk about your work as a playwright and then how you became, or how that led to cinema.
I should say that still now I do not make a difference between being in theater or in cinema. Seems to me somewhere it's the same. The only difference is important, is I should say theological. It's about what is called the présence réelle in France, presencia real. So it's about the host. Mm-hmm. God is here, the theater, and God is not here, that cinema. So that was, let's say, my first, the best way to make the difference between theater and cinema. If not, it is life is a theater, that's very Spanish, and somewhere perceptions are films. But you are in life, you have perceptions, so you are mixing cinema and theater. I start working and be interested in art in my little town of Quilpué, of 12,000 people, where I remember we were 3, sometimes 4 person, young person of 14 years old, waiting for the newspapers and review on the magazines coming from Santiago in the train of 2:30, where there was some information about culture. So let's say culture was before, and this was a very small town. Now it's 500,000, become big. So I started there. There were no theater. There were 2 film theater where we used to go to see only masterpieces, because there was the good moment, the best period of American movies.
American masterpieces?
And so John Ford.
Still now.
Yes, it's the best period. Only sometimes during months and years, only masterpiece. That stopped suddenly, as you know maybe. So there I start making plays.
What stopped? The American masterpieces, or they stopped coming?
The American masterpieces and the magazines, mixed magazine, well, another kind of magazine. We read about Samuel Beckett, Ionesco, Borges, Kafka. And there were 4 pages of culture made by the good writers, the best you could find in Chile. So there was this game between province and capital and the rest of the world. I should say there was a situation not very different somewhere of the situation of the James Joyce in Dublin. Somewhere was a little bit like that. My generation made so many things. My generation is the generation of the so-called boom in literature, so Vargas Llosa, Garcia Marquez, José Donoso, etc. And if I insist in this, it's because for me it's very important to come to this place which is supposed to be not in the center of something. And it seems to me that from the beginning I felt that the center was everywhere. And it's not about post-modernism or whatever. It's because for real, with communication or without communication, for some reason that somebody has to explain, the center are everywhere. And that was said by Paul Valéry, Variété 3, by Bertrand Russell, talking about when we lost the center. I mean, Paris is not anymore, London is not anymore the center, it's not now New York, the center is everywhere. So this for me is important, coming here and being here in the center of something. is a different center. So I start making plays. There's a detail. I made a bet with myself. I said, I will make 100 plays. 100 is a kind of magic, let's say magic word. So I make 100 plays, sometimes of 2 pages. I have, what was important is 100. But trying to put one idea inside. And then I stopped at 19 years old and started making another thing, who was film. It happened because first I had a fellowship. So I was suddenly a 19-year-old being paid to write, and it was a kind of shock being in that country who was not the most rich country in the world, being paid more than my father and my mother to make plays, and I feel guilty. And one day I was in the street, I saw the country. I said, cinema is better to do that. And there was, at the time, only one camera in the country, 160 millimeters. But I managed to talk with the camera, the owner of the camera was the university, experimental center, called experimental center. It was 1 camera, 3 person, and something like editing room. So I went there, I managed to make a film there. And it was a kind of expressionist film, La Maleta, the luggage, where somebody is with the luggage, somebody is inside the luggage. And suddenly, I was making this very abstract film when I saw people screaming in the street about this and that, guns, police, all that. I wouldn't say I had a kind of social conscience, because I had it already from the beginning, I think, from my family and from my friends, from myself. But I had the idea that with all that you could make a film, going back to this special kind of reality, who was the Chilean reality. And suddenly I realized that that was connected with the plays I was writing. So the historian called that theater of absurd. Was an English person who gave that name. It's maybe called only simply poetic theater.
With that in mind, can I ask my second question? In your writing, in your Poetics of Cinema, you argue that there's a radical difference between saying and demonstrating image and word.
Yes.
And yet you talk about cinema as a form of poetry. Can you just distinguish between what you mean by poetry in the literary sense and the cinema of poetry?
Well, let's say poetry is, I'd say that I start being interested in the university, being studied with law, with theology, without being a Catholic or nothing. But theology was something that was very fascinating for me, and I went there. And I was interested in, how could I say, in cinema, because I wanted to know what was cinema exactly. And now I am 66, so let's say almost half a century later, I do not know what is cinema still. Exactly, because the word exactly is not a good word for that. But I tried to make a sort of definition of what is cinema, and it is. They are all the arts connected through poetry. But as you know, poetry means many things. I should say 2 kinds of poetries. The technique poetry, so there's the techne, and let's say the crazy poetry. So what is called Theaphobos. The intellectual can correct me. Theaphobos. So what make the god the scare, what is scary in poetry. So the poetry of the vates, the vaticinio, the poetry that was shamanic, you could call shamanic. So this, without this crazy component, the arts connected by the cinema, this total art, is no more. It's almost like what Wagner called the total art. It's not total because remember that the art, if you know, I remember always that Marquis de Villena in the 15th century, connected this specialist, 15th century Marquis de Villena tried to say that in the artes historia, so the art to cut meat. This treatise, he wrote this book, and he said that was in the prologue. There was that kind of book that have 100 pages of prologue and 20 pages of the
text
of the thing. He said that at the time there were 110 different arts. There were so many, too many. So they asked the Pope to make some, well, to eliminate some art. And the Pope eliminated 30, so there were 80 anyway, there are a lot. So, and then in the 20th century, there were some art added, and the cinema was called the seventh art because of the fine arts. But there were all kinds of art from this variety. There's no more variety of trivium and quadrivium. You know, they are not the same in one country and the other. In Latin America, in the trivium and quadrivium is one thing. In France is one. In Spain is another one, etc. So to say cinema is an art is not very clear. So to connect all the art means to connect the disconnected aspect of life with the craziness of poetry. Seems to me that that could be a good approximation. It's not a definition of what is cinema.
Okay. But your cinema of poetry then, because you said that theater is about
isn't
presence.
That poetry, so.
It's about presence, but cinema was something about the absence of God. But in that sense, you're talking about poetry as somehow bringing back a sense of presence to the cinema. Does it do that?
I don't know. Poetry for me is just that. It's just that. And for me, my model was poetry of music by Stravinsky. It was somewhere a model, meaning it's a kind of cooking recipes. I make this, well, a film can be made like this and that, and then have a kind of, let's say, I don't know how to say, it's a reason for to make the film. So a general theory, using the expression of Giordano Bruno, universal theory. Giordano Bruno in this De Vincoli in Generi, I don't know how it's translated in English, De Vincoli in Generi. It's about the relationships, divine, in general, about connections. You put this with that, this is connection. There are some connections that make explosions. It's a book of magic, it's not a book of philosophy. So in this book it says, chi deve operare sulla realtà facendo uso dei vincoli dovrebbe avere, per così dire, un'idea generale, universale del mondo, per essere così in situazione di avvincere l'uomo, che è la ricapitolazione dell'universo. So, I don't know what I learned that in Italian because it's written in Latin, but I did. That means that, let's say, who wants to operate, the word operate is bad, mean magic. It's about magic. He was killed because things like that. he wants to operate with reality, mixing this and that and provoking explosion, let's say, must have a universal idea of the totality of things, of the world. You need that. It doesn't mean it is truth or not. It's not about that. It's about to have a general view of things. And then you will be, and that's the bad part, you can avvincere, so to govern, let's say, the world. That is the recapitulation of all things. It's more or less that. So it seems to me that is, well, it's a terrible statement in philosophy and in politics, but it's a very good one for making films. It's a very good one it's like an editing statement that Einstein would love. So I start with that, making connection, and I try to communicate to the students, some of them are here, my student in Aberdeen, is that how to put things together.
To create a world.
Yes, put things together is very simple. If, let's say, in the scene you are awake in the morning, and you go to wash your hands in the toilet, and there is an egg and not soap. Then you are making fried eggs, and there is, in the middle of fried eggs, there is a toothbrush. What is doing this toothbrush there? This is vincoli. These are the connection. So I was. This is a way to say that when you make a film, you are thinking about these 100 different arts, from the art of walking to the art of making music. Playing guitar as being something different of making music, making noises. The art of making nothing at all.
Okay, can I ask, in the 11 years between your writing of Poetics of Cinema 1 and Volume 1 and Volume 2, you claim that a lot has changed, and now it is better to be a pessimist than a suicidal optimist. Can you explain what has changed in terms of film production, distribution, to make you have a pessimistic view of the future of cinema? And maybe you can also tell us what suicidal optimism is.
Well, let's say in the Hollywood vocabulary, let's say the Hollywood dialect, they say there are two kinds of filmmakers, the screamers and the dreamers. The screamers are better because they are all the time furious, trying to make fast and best and the best thing. And the dreamers, they are always wondering to make come a good idea in the last moment, so it's too late. It's my case. So I try to start with an image that's truth. But what is this image? I can give a very, very concrete example. 4 days ago, I started working in a project to be made in Aberdeen. Just like this. It seems to me Aberdeen is a very cinematic city. It's extremely cinematic. I mean, you put the camera everywhere, it's good. All Aberdeen is perfect, but that appeal Stevenson. So I said, well, that's something to do because I have criminal fantasies in Aberdeen for the first time in my life. And I said, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde would be a good thing. So I read, because it was in the bookshop in the front of the university, and there I saw that, well, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the big thing is they are the same person. A good one, the bad one, the strange one, the official one. Okay. What if they are two? And all this is about a friendship. It's not about double personality. The connection of somebody who is a kind of hooligan, a bad guy, and another who is the good one. The connection was an image. The image is to see this church that become pubs and coffee shop, and that you can find in Union Street. You go to a cathedral, neo-Gothic cathedral, and suddenly it's about beers and sandwiches and dancing, and this, for me, was, well, for many people, I suppose, it was a shock, and this shock was a starting point to make this Jekyll and Hyde. So the image was first. That does not mean that there is not narrative.
Okay.
I am afraid we should go to
The
clips.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's going to be very difficult to talk about Raoul's work in its entirety. As you can see, even the way he responds here, it's very complex. It's full of references to literature, to poetry, to philosophy, to history of art, theology, etc. But what I'd like to talk about are a few themes, and maybe we'll introduce those themes after we look at the first clip, which is from your 1999 film, Time Regained. It's here behind us, but can we lower the house lights by any chance? Thank you. If you could first just talk a little bit about the way you visualize experience of time as somewhat of a collision of dreams, voluntary and involuntary memories. And then the second part, your own sort of fluid style of filming that you employ to create a sense of discontinuity, both in terms of time and space.
Let's call it liquid. Yes. Because if you see that, well, here is difficult because it was not, the image is not the best. But if you notice, all the audience is moving. So it's about we are not, is the uncertainty of, I don't know if you can say that, of the space. So easy to say, difficult to do, because I have to put all the theater on rails.
Right.
So there were something like 20 technicians moving 100 people. And they were those who are in the back come the front, and then the other move like there. So it's a very banal situation. It's the sonata of Vinteuil for those who are Proustian. So a sonata that deserves something like maybe 100, 200 pages, I don't know, a lot in the book. And the sonata was made using well, we know about that. It was a little bit Saint-Saëns, a little bit César Franck, and some toes of echoes of Wagner. So all the Proustians are concentrating that, and suddenly it's all the theater, all the audience start moving, and that make an echo to all the, let's say, the mise en scène, the way you make the whole film, who is the image, the starting image was simply the water. If you put just a river and you put it's a length called as mesmerizer, who is going making long image and then flat and long and flat, and you put in the river. You use that usually for show.
Right.
I don't for.
That's the opening sequence in the film.
Yes, it's the titles are there, and all the film will be made using this system. Not the mesmerizing, who is about the summation of the image, but that works with the water, but about the fact that you are not really sure where you are. So you can play with these three system, let's say three ways of deal with the memory. So the voluntary memory, you want to remember this, I know this, he was there, etc. The unwill, so the implicit memory, and this he calls, so it's strangely he called that the félicité. So literally, happiness. The happiness is you suddenly, an accident, I make fall this, and suddenly I am not anymore here, but 20 years before, but for real. Meaning it's not memories, it's not nostalgia, it's the reality. You are there. So it's kind of, well, that can be called disorder, but Proust has that. And some persons told me that they had that a couple of times in their life. It's a special kind of what the Japanese Buddhists then call, how it's called, I forgot the name, the ecstasy, the sudden ecstasy of being, I forgot the name. You maybe remember the name of the...
Alberto does.
Satori. Thank you. Well, the Satori is a kind, but playing with you are in the Satori, you are connected with the universe. Here you are in your own past, but for real. And this reality is very different of the reality when you were there. It's much better. It's much clear. So clear is not a word, but much intense.
Mm-hmm. So maybe just from that, you can tell us what some of the challenges were adapting Marcel Proust's Time Regained to film, and what film allowed you to do that narrative can't.
Well, I say it's a kind of, you can call alibi. It was a way to make the film I wanted to make, without being criticized because it was too odd, to this, to that, not narrative, etc. All the critics I have always. But if if somebody said that to me, I could say, well, it's Marcel, it's not me. Yeah. So I am trying to do what he did in writing. So that was the first. I never thought about challenge. By the way, for me, it's not a good word, challenge. I'm not. I am not very agonist. Even if I come from Patagonia, which about pathos and agon, not very. It's not about challenge. There was not at all. It was for me very simple to make a prose film was the best, and the best thing to do in that moment. That was. I have to. If I talk in a very realistic way, I say that if I made that because it was less expensive than Victor Hugo, The Worker of the Sea. I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move probably to the next clip soon, just in a second. But with your 2006 film, Klimt, which we're going to show you 2 clips from in a second, you also returned to the style of blurring the lines between dreams, fantasies, and memories. But as in Time Regained, in this film, you have this reoccurrences or a series of echoes that you use to sort of
and I go further in
themes.
Klimt. I try to go.
So I'll ask you a question after the clip. So we'll see the clip, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about this particular theme.
Talking about
in
the echoes from one situation to another one that happened half an hour later in the film.
Right.
So we can see that.
If there's any way to put those balcony lights off, that would be great.
Please come in. This may interest you. I hope one day to open shop. Now, alas, I possess not the means. But if there is anything there which you find of interest. Are you connoisseur of Chinese paintings?
I've seen a few. Are they really from China?
Oh yes, they're from China. Or rather, he is from China.
Was he who painted them all?
Not all, but he imitates old paintings. Imitates very well. Want to see? 喂，起来，起来！这位先生要看画画。沙龙，去拿水。Take tea. Sit down, please. He prepares his brushes. Paint picture. One half chrome, not expensive. Surprise.
And then
The second clip is going to
half
come
an hour
right.
later.
No use here. It lends itself only to vagueness.
This is Chile.
Pass me the coffee. What about you, imbecile? Everything you say is vague, based on naturally.
May I join you?
Ah, Sheila, it's you. Yes, please.
They say you found a new Chinese style. No perspective.
I wouldn't say there was no perspective. I'd say there were several. But it's all in brushstrokes, just as in your paintings.
Look at this cream cake here. It probably took, what, 8 hours to bake? And yet, what's the point? You'd all be better off eating bread, milk, sugar. You'd be saving the bakers a hell of a lot of time and trouble, and it would also be far more nutritious.
Do you have a pencil? I'll draw the first line and you draw the next, and so on.
Who's winning?
No one.
Whose drawing is this, yours or mine?
You know what those young people say? They say that you have to stand outside of history. This history is a nightmare, and that there's absolutely nothing else to be said about it.
And who are they?
I don't know. They sound like philosophers. Except they...
Okay, so maybe you could say something about how these themes will anchor the viewer, or it'll enforce different themes that come throughout the films.
I've been dealing all these games. They are games, but trying to make more evident that the film that stay for this film is this version is my version is so 2 hours 15, and by the way, this sequence is cut in the normal version, the commercial version. If I try to do that, is trying to mix in many ways things that happen from the beginning, then 10 minutes later, then there are sometimes they are like this is the most evident. Chinese dish claimed somewhere how to make painting with 2 persons. That is a boy and himself, the master. Then the master who is claimed teach to Chile how to make a painting that exists. It's called the Pilgrims. This is, and of course it's not true that they make together, but Chile made it. It's the idea, these 2 pilgrims afraid of the world, trying to help each other in this terrible world they are living, is Vienna, and the echoes of something that will come. So if you made a kind of web of all kind of situations that remind you constantly to the past to what will happen later, you will have a special kind of film. Even if you see there, looks like a very normal film. For 5 minutes, TV, you found this film on TV, in 5 minutes you will find, well, it's a biopic or biopic. But it is and it is not. And It's about introducing some idea, like, let's say, the cubism, if you want, meaning that you have several perspectives of the same events, without playing with flashback or flash forward. Playing apparently a linear film, but inside there are so many elements that come back, gestures, a word. So that was the game I tried to play. This film was supposed to be a film, let's say, has to be commercial. It was supposed to be a mainstream. So I played the game, trying to make a film that could be seen from outside a normal film and not be so normal if you go inside, into details.
Okay, so these resonances change the theme once they're repeated.
So it's about complexity.
Right.
The film, you go inside, and that complexity means something very simple. You see the film 10 times, and you will see 10 different films, because it's not about focusing. It's a very Hollywood word. You lost the focus. You focalize, and the film is supposed to have this center, and the rest is, as the professor, the teacher of art say, is ornament. So the essential is in the center, and then the rest is ornament. What if the center is everywhere? Well, in this moment is my personal game.
Okay, great. Since we're running late on time, the last clip we're going to show is Les Dons, your last film that's been completed. It's a 3-minute film, and it's from To Each His Own Cinema.
Yeah.
If you could just say something about what instructions you were given. This was for the 60th anniversary of the Cannes Film Festival, is that correct?
Well, that was a very special game. I mean, the good perversity of the director of Cannes Film Festival, Gilles Jacob, to make a celebration of the 60 years of the festival, he invented this. He said, I will ask to the 30-something filmmakers that he called the filmmaker of the festival, meaning they are not the best of the world, but it's the taste of the festival. Is this kind of independent cinema they defend in Cannes Film Festival. So they say to ask each of these 30-something, 33 we were, I think. At the beginning was 35, but there are 2 who went away. 33 filmmakers will make a film with the same amount of money, doing what they want, but that has to happen in a film theater and anywhere, even the toilets, that Cronenberg made in the toilets. So I did mine, the other, and nobody of us know what the other should make or would make. And later I understood that the bet of Gilles Jacob was, if the cinema as an art exists, all the film will be different. If they are the same film that you can put from the best one to the worst, cinema does not exist. Cinema is like Hollywood. So it's a kind of non-cinema. I like many Hollywood movies, I told you. But so it was his point of view. And the films were really different. So that was it.
So let's see, Raoul's The Gift.
Et vous dites que tout ça se passe il y a longtemps.
Un demi-siècle,
Où ça?
au Chili, à Atacama, près de la frontière dans la montagne. Notre évêque avait eu l'idée de faire un don à une communauté indienne Koya.
Un don, vous dites?
2 même, un appareil de projection 16 mm et une radio. Il croyait qu'un cadeau pareil ne pouvait que les enchanter.
Ils n'ont pas aimé.
Ben, je l'ignore, ils n'ont même pas ouvert les caisses.
Il est vrai que les Goya ne sont pas très expressifs.
Pas un geste de reconnaissance, pas même un sourire.
Ils sont comme ça.
Une semaine après, un voyageur nous racontait qu'il avait vu de ses propres yeux les Goya en train de partager les pièces du projecteur. Oh mon Dieu.
Communisme primitif. Ils font souvent comme ça.
Et ils avaient mis le feu à la radio, et en regardant les flammes, ils riaient, ils dansaient.
Parfois, ils font comme ça. Et après?
2 ans se sont passés,
C'est long, 2 ans.
et nous sommes revenus, et nous avons vu, tiens-toi bien, ils avaient reconstitué le projecteur, mais en bois, pièce par pièce.
Je savais que les Indiens Pita faisaient ça dans le Haut-Orinoco. J'ignorais que les Goya faisaient pareil.
Accroche-toi bien à ton fauteuil. Ils avaient reconstruit notre deuxième cadeau, la radio. Ils avaient fait une radio géante. Et la radio était devenue une salle de cinéma.
La radio? Ils font jamais ça.
Ils nous ont conduits à l'intérieur du temple radio, où ils avaient placé le projecteur en bois. Et ils nous ont projeté un film.
Lequel?
Casablanca avec Ingrid Bergman. Nous avons donc assisté à la projection de Casablanca. Et quand le film s'est terminé, 3 minutes s'étaient passées.
3 minutes. Ça me rappelle que je dois partir. À demain. Je vous accompagne chez vous?
Ben, voyons, j'habite ici.
Oui, c'est vrai, j'oublie toujours. Tell me, they made you drink a special kind of tea, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
They always do that. They use hallucinogenics. Were you already blind at the time?
Non, je suis devenu aveugle après la projection, mais aucun rapport. Oui, je suis devenu aveugle et athée en même temps.
C'est pourquoi tout ça.
Can you just talk a little bit about how you came to the subject for this film, and maybe a little bit about...
Well, let's say this is the image for a film I want to make with a telephone. You know, the telephone you can make film with. So, yes, because his film nobody will produce, so I need 200 friends and a telephone and some money for sandwiches. And that's the Goyas was the main problem for anthropologists in Chile. In Latin America now, there is a movement that have connection, that's connected with Chavez, is connected with all the Indianists, which is called the re-ethnification, meaning that people feeling that they are outside of this liberal and tough economically society, they move back and they decide to be Indian, even if they are not at all. Indian, everybody is Indian in Latin America. I am half Indian, everybody is Indian somewhere. So to decide to become an Indian is not so extravagant. So they decide, and the Goyas, not those ones, and other Goyas, they managed to invent in something like 3 weeks, invented mythology, dance, music inspired sometime of the Beatles, and that music was all the mythology and everything, but they forgot the language. So anthropology came there and say, well, yes, I can give you the certificate that you are ethnia, but where is the language? So no language, not ethnia, no money for the ethnia, no, because let's say the Indians, let's call it that because for to be simple, they have the right to receive some money as somebody wounded in the war, handicapped.
Like reparations?
They have the right to receive money. So it's important. In some ways, not so much money, but it is important. So this was one aspect. The other was that for real they decide to become an ethnia different from others. And everywhere in Latin America, this movement of re-ethnification, people trying to become a new ethnia, and invented all kind of myths. And so I wanted to make a film of that, but I started with this image. A radio, who is a film theater, inside there is a machine that is a reproduction in wood, pieces of wood of a machine, of a camera, and people drinking some tea have the idea they are looking films. So that was the allegorical starting point of a film. I hope I will have the time and the energy to make with the little telephones. It's good, and let's say this is important to talk about this, because it's important to people who want maybe to make films, that to understand that they do not have to go through commissions, through Hollywood, through theater. Film is becoming something the film industry is becoming something very odd and very extraordinary in this moment. You have the Nigerian film, it's a medium of 10,000 films a year, making the neighborhoods, and there are some films made in Chile for people that made the film for not to show it, with the purpose of not to show to nobody, and not being frustrated. So film is moving everywhere, and this film for me is more interesting than the mainstream, the so-called mainstream. That's it.
With that, we'll move on to some wine. I think we have a reception right now. Thank you very much, Raúl.
Thanks to you.